Uh, Hello everyone, I'm Inian, and today I'm going to talk to you about how do you enable Brotli if you're already using a CDN. I probably need not have put the clickbait title here since you guys are already here, but yeah, I thought it'll be fun. Yeah, so I am the founder of a startup called Execure. We work in web performance. I'm generally interested in JavaScript security and web performance. And yeah, so what is Brotli? Brotli is a new compression format that is supposed to be the successor of gzip. Gzip has been there for ages now, and this is a format which is incompatible with gzip, so the browser must support it for you to enable this format. It can compress both text-based assets and binary formats. So I was surprised to hear that even binary formats like WebAssembly could be compressed if you use the Brotli encoding format. And it's been used for quite some time inside the WoW2 font format. So this is the first time it's been exposed as a compression format for other assets, but it's been sort of used internally as WoW2 for quite some time. And studies have showed that depending on the compression setting that you set, it may compress anywhere from 10 to 20% better than Zopfli, which is another slightly compatible format with Deflate. With respect to browser support, any Chromium-based browser supports it, Firefox supports it, Edge is implementing it right now, and yeah, not talking about Safari. And so I was really excited about this, and I wanted to see how many people are using Brotli at the moment. So I just ran. So Google BigQuery has one of the data set it has is the web page test crawl that happens every month. So you could run a lot of interesting queries on top of it. And I just wrote a query to see that okay, how many guys who are using CDNs have at least Brotli supported. Uh, Result wasn't pretty good actually. So there's this one commercial CDN called CDN 77, which uses Brotli, and you can, if you're using them, you can enable support for that. But for other CDNs, unless you have the entire control of the stack, like Facebook has its own CDN, and so does Google. So these guys have domains which serve Brotli assets. So these are the number of domains which serve Brotli assets. So yeah, we got thinking about how do we enable Brotli for our own clients. So we use a lot of different new web technologies and which can speed up websites. So we thought, okay, we should enable this. We use commodity CDNs ourselves. So we just package CDNs, add some new interesting features on top of them, and resell sell that to our own customers. But when we found that, okay, when the CDN pings our origin servers, it sort of normalizes the accept encoding header to gzip. So even if the request is coming from Chrome, it supports Brotli. The accept encoding header is like gzip, comma, br, and so on. But when the CDN pings your server, it's always normalized to gzip. I don't know why exactly they do this, but what this essentially means that you can't figure out if your end client is supporting this format or not. So we were already using Service Worker for some of the other optimizations. So we thought that, okay, what can we do to sort of get around this problem? And we realized that, okay, we could probably add another header to our request and say that, okay, find out if the client is supporting Brotli. I'll add another header, which will pass through the CDN. The CDN won't normalize it because it doesn't know what header it is. So we thought, okay, Service Worker is a good place to do this. It gets run for every request. So for every request that goes out, I just do a small check if the client supports Brotli or not. And using that header, I can send a Brotli asset from the server. So yeah, so this is what I tried to do. But inside the Service Worker context, if you try to access the accept encoding header, you can't basically you can't access the accept encoding header. This is because it's classified as a protected header in the fetch specification, which basically means that there are some user agent headers that you can't tamper with. Accept encoding is one of them. Similarly, user agent you can't tamper with in your Service Worker. So that was a problem. And so yeah, so to basically get around that, we had to do some other way of detecting if our client supports Brotli or not. So what we did was we basically hosted a Brotli compressed file at this URL. So at some URL, you just always have a Brotli encoded asset. So in the install event of the Service Worker, which is basically called when the Service Worker is installing for the very first time, I fetch the resource and see that, okay, if I'm able to, I try to decode it as text in the rest.txt call. and I see if the string matches. So if the browser supports Brotli, the rest.txt will properly decode the asset and it'll give back the proper string. For browsers which don't support Brotli, it will give you some junk, and it'll basically fail that call. So I thought, okay, I set the is Brotli supported variable based on this. Brotli is supported everywhere. Service workers are supported, but you can't basically rely on that for long. For example, if Edge lands their service worker support before they support Brotli, for example, you can't just say that just because the browser supports service worker, it's going to support Brotli. So that's why we had to go through this detection logic, in a sense. And yeah, so basically after that, for every fetch event, we just see that, okay, if Brotli is supported, just attach the variable, add a new header and send it to the server, and the server can respond accordingly. Problem is Brotli, the variable that we set was undefined for some time. Can any of you guess why this could probably happen? So we are basically setting a global variable over here saying that, okay, if in the install event, if Brotli is supported, I'll just set that. So what happens is that service workers are terminated if they're not in use. So once it handles all the push events or all the fetch events, you can't basically rely on global state in a service worker. So all the variable that we set wouldn't work for future visits, which sort of misses the point. So the solution was simple. Just use it. Okay, it wasn't simple. The API was terrible to use, I think. But still, you need to, if you want to maintain persistent state, you either use the cache API or the IndexedDB API. And yeah, that's basically to change the code to store the status, Brotli support status in IndexedDB, and then you could just send it along with the fetch request. So yeah, any chances to this is slightly a hack, I would say. It's not very elegant. The problem is we couldn't detect support for Brotli in client-side JavaScript. I tried raising an issue to see if it can be integrated with client hints, but yeah, the people there basically said that, okay, we are already advertising the support through accept encoding header. The CDNs need to fix it. It's not a spec problem. Hopefully CDNs start not mucking around with the header quite soon once the support for Brotli catches up. And yeah, we could also preload or inline the Brotli test file somehow, so that once the Brotli file is sort of pushed along with the service worker, or it somehow hardcode the Brotli file inside the service worker. Yeah, I'm still exploring that. Yeah, so that's basically it. Wrote an article, and you can find the code online, and check us out at DexSecure. That's it.